welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Berry, and today we are going to be watching how shopping at this mall killed 502 people. I do not think this mall is in Florida, but I would be careful if you do that too. So let's check it out.
June 29th, 1995, 2 p.m., Socho District, Seoul, South Korea.
Oh.
The Sampoong Department Store was, by any measure, having a good day. 40,000 shoppers moved through its 5 floors.
Holy
Families
crap.
drifted between clothing racks. Teenagers crowded the food court.
Dude, this is a 1995 video because I don't know the last time I went to the mall and had fun. Like just straight up walking around and having a good time and giggling, eating my Big Mac, going from shop to shop, enjoying everything. Every mall is dead.
Children pressed their hands against the glass display cases near the entrance. Unbeknownst to them, up above, on the 5th floor, the mall's top executives were having a meeting to decide their fate.
What? Wait, whoa. Who they got up there, Mr. Beast?
The suits sat around a table in one of the management offices. Chairman Lee Jun and his son, the store's president, were presiding over the meeting. The building's cooling systems had been switched off roughly an hour earlier, and the hot air in the room had gone completely still. Spread across the table in front of them were maintenance logs, photographs, and handwritten warnings. Everyone presented their conflicting ideas of what to do with the situation at hand, but Chairman Lee Jun shut the conversation down, rose from the table, and delivered his instruction.
No more AC. And don't even get me started with BDEFG. Minus 2.
The mall would stay open.
What?
The escalators would keep running, the employees would keep working, and most importantly, the happy shoppers would keep spending their money. Then, at 5:40 p.m., without a word to anyone, the executives walked out of the building to safety and left thousands of customers and employees to die. But the story does not begin with that meeting. It had been building since early that morning. Let's get into it.
Okay, you do not want Annie Ann's that bad. That's crazy. I hate when people are selfish like that. What was the one that we watched? It was like a boat, and the guy like crashed the boat or something, but he was like the first person to get off, and he didn't stay on, and then like everybody else exploded. It was like a internet historian video.
At 8:05 a.m.
Yeah, Concordia. Yeah. Costa Concordia. This is like the Costa Concordia, but they care more about margins and costs than the Concordia, I guess.
The facility manager at Sampoong Department Store unfolded a handwritten note from the night shift security guard. It said there was a loud cracking noise coming from the roof.
It was me. I turned 20.
The manager read it twice, then he folded the note, put it in his pocket, and went upstairs. At 10:02 a.m., he arrived at the food court, which spanned the entirety of the 5th floor, the top floor of the building. By the time he got there, part of the restaurant area had already been closed to the public after staff noticed large cracks running around one of the main concrete columns that supported that floor. But
Oh
the
my
rest of the department
God!
store stayed open. The manager crouched down to get a closer look at the damage. Some of the cracks were wide enough to slide a finger into. He knew
I mean, I got one of those too.
the building well enough to understand what he was looking at. The upper floors depended heavily on columns like this one to carry the load. If one of them started to fall, there was no telling what could happen. He then moved up to the roof and saw that the concrete there had split in several places with long fractures cutting across the surface.
That's gonna be
Some
expensive.
areas had sunk lower than others. He worked his way back through the upper levels, speaking to maintenance staff and checking every area that had been flagged. The crew had already moved heavy furniture away from the worst cracks, filed their
Holy!
reports, and put up caution tape to keep the damage out of view from customers.
Can you imagine the entire building is cracking and your manager at H&M goes, so are you still coming in today? Like, I bring some duct tape.
They wouldn't want to alarm them. This would be the first of many unfortunate choices made that day that would eventually result in a horrific tragedy, the likes of which the country had never seen. At 10:03 a.m., with the restaurant section still cordoned off, the rest of Sampoong
Oh my God, the elevators back in the day looked like those little tubes that you put your deposit into at the bank.
opened as usual. But by midday, the problem was no longer confined to the upper floors. A deep bang echoed through the building, loud enough that shoppers on the lower levels paused and looked around. Most assumed it was something being dropped and kept moving.
Oh my God, in America, I would have thought, boom, 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 boom.
Meanwhile, staff on the upper floors could feel a faint vibration underfoot, and looking up, they could see fine dust shaking loose from the ceilings above them.
Oh my
Management
God!
closed off additional sections above, but the sales floor below still looked entirely normal. Customers kept moving through cosmetic counters and clothing racks. Most had no idea that the 5th floor was partially closed.
I love fashion in Asia. I know that sounds really weird, but it's like so girly and feminine and cute, and everybody goes out like looking their best and like slaying. It's so cute. That's my favorite part about going to Japan, is like dressing up and being girly.
The escalators were still running. The registers were still opening and shutting. Nothing raised any red flags. Even for the workers, like 18-year-old store employee Lee Soon-min, working what she planned to be her final shift before starting college later that summer. Or like 19-year-old Yu Ji-hwan. For her, it was a normal day. She put on her nice shirt and went down to the basement level to start her shift in the home goods section, selling crystals. She had been working at this job for around 6 months. Except she heard a rumor that the 5th floor had sunken a bit. But since no one was being evacuated, she figured there was nothing to worry about.
No, screw you, Gorpa! Oh my God, wait, has anybody in chat ever worked at the mall? I have never, ever worked at the mall. I think like the only like cool part about working at the mall is like maybe on your lunch break you can go to like Taco Bell. That's all I can think of. I only bartended.
And instead just focused on getting through the day. At 12:30 p.m., the manager turned his attention to the roof equipment. He saw that the cracks had worsened since morning. The air conditioning units on the roof had been running all day. He ordered to shut them down. The hum that had run through the upper floors all morning went quiet, but it was far too late. The dust along the crack lines continued to fall. There was nothing anyone could do now to stop what was about to happen. On the 5th floor, heavy kitchen equipment like industrial ovens, massive room-sized refrigerators, and long cooking stations lined the restaurant.
Dude, I never thought about the schematics of having like a food court up high, because that's a lot of weight. And you know my big fat ass trying to get me a plate of orange chicken, so that's at least another 2,000 pounds. Damn!
Of this was pressing down on a structure already strained by the weight on the rooftop. At 1:30 p.m., the manager went back up to the roof. The fractures had spread since his last visit. Several had widened. Fine concrete powder gathered along the edges of the splits where pieces of the roof were grinding against each other. This was the last warning sign for him. He picked up the phone and called his superiors directly, warning them that the building might be at risk. But the decision of what to do next was unfortunately not his to make. Perhaps if it had been, hundreds of lives could have been spared. At 2:00 p.m., the senior executives of Sampoong Department Store gathered in a management office on the 5th floor for an emergency meeting.
Sorry, I know it's not funny, but I can't even hear the word emergency meeting with that burp. But my God, surely they'll make the right decision here and save everybody's lives and not be greedy for a couple dollar bills.
Reports were set across the table, maintenance logs, photos of the cracks, and notes from the facility manager. The air inside the room had gone still since the cooling units had been shut down, making them sweat. As they talked, they wondered why this could be happening. Back in 1987, when Lee Jun's company was constructing the structure that would later become this mall, the project had originally been approved as only a 4-story building for a different use. They decided to use the flat slab method to save money. It meant that the floor—
It's always the money-saving crap. It was like that other video we watched where they built an apartment complex, but on the outside, they didn't build it with like fire-resistant building materials, so then like the whole thing caught on fire. Just build it right, you'll even get more longevity out of it.
Floors sat directly on columns without thick crossbeams or a strong steel frame to spread the weight. In that kind of design, there is no backup support, and every column has to be perfect. If one fails, the load has nowhere else to go. But halfway through construction, the owners made a major decision to convert it into a department store instead. That decision forced engineers to modify the design. An additional floor was added, and extensive modifications were made to the gray structure. The redesign pushed the total floor area from the originally intended 720,000 square feet to nearly 800,000. The building now had to support thousands of shoppers, restaurants, and heavy retail equipment, far beyond—
No, they got a Sears up in there! Like, literally everything there is 9,000 pounds!
what the original structure had been designed for. To make matters worse, these particular columns—
Yeah, let's add a Sears, let's add like a store that sells elephants. You know what? Let's add a bowling ball manufacturer.
Had been built smaller than the design required. The original blueprint specified columns 79 centimeters thick. However, during construction in 1988, that number was reduced by a quarter, down to 58 centimeters, to cut construction costs.
Damn.
On top of that, the columns
The back rooms, they even added that shit. Might as well.
were spread out further than intended, nearly 11 meters apart from each other, as per Chairman Lee Jun's orders. More space between columns meant more room for shops, which meant more rental income. It also meant that each column was being asked to carry an enormous share of the building's total load, with no margin for error.
This is
Even
crazy.
though the changes pushed the building beyond its original load limits, the plan still received approval from the local government office in
What? How did that receive approval? And you try to add some stairs in front of your house and the HOA comes in, tells you to turn around and starts spanking you until you know. What the hell?
Siocho district, somehow. But there was resistance from the engineers themselves. Wusung Construction, the firm that was hired to construct the original design, refused to carry out the changes. Their engineers reviewed the new plans and told Lee Jun that the redesign posed serious structural risks. The modified building would not hold, they said.
Yeah.
Lee dismissed them and brought in his own company to carry out the changes.
Oh my god. Dude, he said, I got a guy who will do it for cheap. Screw you.
Including the addition of the 5th floor. The problems stacked up from there. Turning the building into a department store meant installing escalators on every floor.
Escalators, escalators, escalators. Eels.
To do that, workers cut huge holes through each concrete slab.
You can do that?
Every cut removed structural support from the floors. The building also ran into zoning issues. Structures of that size were not supposed to operate entirely as department stores.
Was there anything that was done correctly at all? Like, I don't even like the color of the paint on the outside either. Like, that's also an L.
Lee found a workaround. He ordered the addition of a skating rink on the
What? No! And some pyrotechnics too, might as well.
brand new 5th floor.
What the, on the 5th floor? Nah. At least the Houston Galleria got that shit on the 1st floor.
Later, he changed his mind again. The skating rink never opened. Before long, it was converted into a cluster of restaurants, their kitchens heated by hot water pipes laid directly beneath the floor surface. This was another critical mistake, as the heavy kitchen equipment and the thick concrete required for the underfloor heating created a far greater weight burden than the skating rink ever would have. And just to make things even worse, the 5th floor had another design flaw.
What? Oh, it's off center. Great.
Columns on that floor did not line up with the columns beneath them. In a properly engineered structure, columns stack vertically so that weight travels in a straight line from the uppermost floor down through every level to the foundation. In Sampoong, the load transferred sideways through the concrete slab before reaching the next column down, putting even more stress on the columns and floor of the 5th level. Despite all these reckless changes, the building still made it through approval and opened to the public in 1990. And the answer to how it got away with all the violations lies in the timing.
I would say money. And then, in the summer, they're going to release the new lazy river on the 6th floor! Right next to the giant Ferris wheel! Oh my god, guys, we gotta go!
South Korea in the late 1980s was building fast. The economy was booming. Cities were expanding. New businesses were opening. And malls were suddenly everywhere. Then came the 1988 Olympics in Seoul. Hosting the games meant massive projects everywhere. Stadiums, hotels, roads, and shopping centers for tourists. Deadlines were tight, and projects piled on top of each other. In favor of rapid development, building codes
Oh my god, it slipped through the cracks. Oh no.
were often poorly enforced. Inspections were rushed, and violations were brushed off just so projects could be finished on schedule. Cutting corners was being rewarded. Still, the mall stood with no impeding signs of danger for 5 straight years. So what was causing the cracks to appear now?
But you know who doesn't cut corners?
But you know who?
I'm sorry, is it me?
Hey, that's my line. Not another one. Bro.
Yes?
No.
Yes?
Not you deja brews. I meant the original. Never mind. Just don't take my lines, all right? It's not
Okay.
cool.
You know what's also not cool? Receiving a workplace
You.
injury due to negligence of another party.
Stop turning
Oh.
what I say into segues. Listen, Brew, I know you're new here, but there's a reason why I do the sponsor segments, okay? It's because
Just like there's a reason why Morgan & Morgan, this video's sponsor,
Dude, that's like a huge ad. I was watching a video earlier today when I was driving around. They had a Starbucks ad. I was like, oh my God, that's next level.
is America's largest injury law firm.
they have 1,000+ attorneys and more than 100 offices nationwide.
They've recovered $30 billion for their clients. And
They've been fighting for people for over 35 years like an army of lawyers ready to battle it out.
they're for the people, protecting those defenseless against powerful interests. So if you get injured because of someone else's negligence, you deserve to be paid. And get
Also, earlier I said I was watching a video when I was driving. I was listening to the video and not watching the video. Leave me alone, police officers.
guess what?
The fee is free unless they win, and that's what makes them so great.
For more information, you can go to forthepeople.com/brew.
Woohoo!
Okay, if you're quite done taking my job, well, let's get back to our regularly scheduled program.
Taking our
where those
gerbs.
mall owners were cutting corners.
Yeah.
And getting away with it. But I bet not for long. And as for you, new guy, let's go get you some coffee, okay? Is
I don't
there
like coffee. I'll take a chai.
dispenser that I don't know about?
Oh no, you know him.
Back in the meeting, one executive recalled the relocation of the giant air conditioning units from 2 years ago.
Okay.
Not only did the units add additional weight, but residents in nearby apartments had complained about loud noise on the roof. So the management decided
Professional upstairs neighbors activities. Sorry everybody, I installed 20 air conditioning units and a basketball court. My bad. I look like a horse.
to move them away from the apartments, but they chose the cheaper option. Instead
Of
of hiring a
course.
crane again to lift the heavy equipment safely, workers dragged the units across the roof over the concrete surface.
Oh my God, those are the little ants inside my PC squished up against my graphics card.
Those units weighed over 36 tons. The large tanks alongside them held roughly 87 tons of coolant. That is equivalent to 30 adult elephants
They're here! You remember earlier I said they were gonna install the elephant store? Told you.
being dragged across a concrete roof. The massive weight gouged the surface and left cracks in several places. When the air conditioning units were powered on again, they vibrated constantly.
I'll check that. Don't worry, everybody. I'm the vibration inspector. Okay, I made one bad joke and then the video muted.
They vibrated constantly. The vibrations traveled through the damaged roof, down through the mismatched and undersized columns, and into the rest of the structure. One column in particular took the worst of it. Column 5E on the 5th floor. That was the column the facility manager had been looking at since 8:05 that morning. The damage had been building for years. At 4 o'clock
Jeez.
p.m.,
They just ain't got nobody inspecting anything. Like, years of damage and we ignore it every single day? Nah.
the facility manager came rushing into the meeting with an update. His face was pale as he reported that the cracks around column 5E had widened to 4 inches since his first inspection that morning.
See? 4 inches is huge. Have some pride in yourself.
The structural engineer who had led the completion of the mall's construction was in the room. After hearing the facility manager's report, he immediately advised the entire store be closed without any delay.
Yeah!
But Chairman Lee Jun refused to consider.
On, man. Just close the mall. Then you get your fun viral video of the dude going up to the door and being like, "Why are you closed? Why are you closed?"
his warning. The crowd that day was unusually large and, therefore, more profitable. By 5 o'clock p.m., workers on the 5th floor could see the ceiling visibly sinking. They cleared out the remaining area on that
God!
level, leaving the 5th floor closed off entirely.
So they hid it from everybody. Like, nobody has a chance because nobody could even see it. Awesome.
4 floors below, the sales floor stayed open, business as usual. Stores were busy, but after over 4 hours of no air conditioning, the heat in the building was starting to get to people. Staff
Yeah.
like Park Sung-yeon, a 19-year-old shop assistant, were starting to sweat through their uniforms. When she asked management about the AC, they told her it wasn't working, but would be fixed soon, and advised her to just continue with her work. Because the heat wasn't stopping
Nah, if there's no AC, I DC. I'm leaving.
Shoppers like Lee Gun-suk. She was a 44-year-old housewife who had stepped out that afternoon with a neighbor to buy groceries for dinner. Sampoong was near her apartment building, and when she entered the supermarket on the mall's ground floor, apart from the heat, nothing seemed off. But up above, more loud bangs came from the 5th floor ceiling as
Oh
the
my
roof cracked further.
god!
To Lee Sun-min, it sounded like a huge explosion.
Dude, and no AC in the mall. You guys are right. Like, people are breathing, walking around with their entire family, rubbing shoulders. Like, that is nasty in there. Just straight up condensation all over my glasses. Ew.
By 5:40 p.m., the executives quietly gathered their things and left the building as the upper floors continued to groan and pop under the weight above. More and more fine concrete dust drifted down from the cracks. Several thousand people were still inside the building, shopping, eating in the basement food court, and moving between floors on the escalators. First-year university student Choi Myung-suk had spent the afternoon working in the children's shoe section. At around 5:45 p.m., he went down to the basement to grab something to eat. 18-year-old Lee Sun-min was still on her shift on the first basement floor when a coworker called her over to the other wing of the store. She started to head there and entered the passageway connecting the wings. Meanwhile, 19-year-old Yoo Ji-hwan was still selling crystal in the basement when she heard a loud bang.
Whoa, we just straight up be selling crystal?
Everything shook like an earthquake and then went silent. A moment later, at 5:52 p.m., a deep fracture tore through the structure from above. The roof gave way first, overloading the 5th floor, which consequently dropped into the 4th, and the force kept punching down, floor after floor, collapsing into the basement in under 20 seconds.
Holy crap!
Lights cut out as escalators twisted, and a wall of pulverized concrete and dust rushed through the building so fast that most people did not understand what was happening until they were already under the rubble.
Oh my
And just
god.
like that, almost 1,500 people were trapped in an instant. For Yoo Ji-hwan, everything went pitch black. She was trapped in the rubble, shaped like a dome above her. She tried yelling for help, but all she got was silence in response. Concrete dust and smoke filled her lungs with every breath. The darkness was so complete that Lee Sun-min couldn't see her own hands in front of her. Seconds after the impact, a violent pressure wave moved through the broken structure, carrying debris and sound and a heat she could not explain.
Dude, that would be so hard to even get out because one, you're breathing in all that dust, which I feel like adds like a lot of difficulty because the air is so thick. Then you have to like move stuff, especially if you're trapped like on your leg or on your chest. And you have to not freak out because if you freak out, more stuff's gonna fall on top of you.
When it finally stopped, she could hear screaming from somewhere above her and from somewhere below. Every staircase in the north wing was filled with rubble, leaving her no way out.
Oh my god.
Rescue crews reached the site within minutes of the collapse, digging into the rubble with bare hands and whatever tools they had with them. They couldn't use their heavy equipment without the risk of harming potential survivors. The scale of what they were faced with was immediately clear. The south wing had collapsed completely,
Wow.
leaving the north wing standing alone like a 5-story jagged cliff. This remaining structure was
Holy-
visibly unstable. Seoul Mayor Choi Pyong-yeol, the city official responsible for coordinating this emergency response, faced a decision that had no good answer. Another partial collapse could kill rescuers working inside. He ordered parts of the rescue operation suspended. Expectedly, families and friends of people still trapped inside erupted in protest outside the site. Demonstrations formed in the thousands. They refused to accept the decision, and they made enough noise that the authorities could not ignore them. The collapse had also reached beyond the building itself. Cars in the underground garage had been crushed under the falling structure. The shock had cracked the walls of nearby apartment buildings and caused damage to hundreds of surrounding businesses.
Dude, I didn't think about shock. If they have to like destroy a building somewhere and they like blow it up, how do they protect everything else around it? Like, do they build like a Zeeple dome? I don't know how. Like, sometimes they do that to destroy stuff. Math? Oh, they use math. I forgot that existed. Oh, micro explosions. Yeah, and like, this is also kind of a difficult situation because they do need to go and save people, but at the same time, that is scary to like, you're basically searching for heroes. Like, hey, you're gonna be in a really bad position, but you need to go and save as many people as you can and like, don't think about your own life.
The scale of what had happened was becoming visible block by block. Faced with public pressure, Mayor Choi and city officials gave in. The rescue continued. Engineers were called in to stabilize the still-standing ruins with guy cables, tying sections of the building to prevent further collapse. Slowly, carefully,
W rescuers! Like, they went out knowing the danger and they still did their best and they saved lives.
rescuers went back in, determined to save as many people trapped under the rubble as possible. Unfortunately, the operation was disorganized. It took authorities close to an hour to establish a coordinated disaster response. Police failed to set up adequate barriers around the site, allowing civilians and reporters to move freely through the rubble. Making it harder for emergency crews to reach those still trapped, and harder still to hear it.
Dude, move! I guess they could be concerned, so they're like looking for their family and stuff, but like, move out of the way! Like, we're trying our best and now you're just sitting there blocking everything, man!
Anything beneath the noise. Back in the basement, Lee Sun-min was physically unharmed, but every exit was sealed.
Oh,
she had
no.
no choice but to just sit in complete darkness. Hours passed, breathing dust,
Hours?
listening to the sounds of the ruins settling around her, with no way to know whether anyone was coming or if the rumble around her might cave in at any moment.
Holy crap.
On another level, near an escalator by the central hall, Choi Myung-suk had made it through the initial collapse with his life intact. In the pitch darkness around him, he could hear two women nearby. Both were badly hurt. Neither could see him, and he couldn't see them. The first woman was a 25-
That's like literally hell, just listening to everybody else around you and never knowing whenever your chance to leave is, and everybody is in pain and suffering and like screaming. That is terrifying.
5-year-old store employee. Though they couldn't see each other, they tried to encourage one another. But Choi could hear her voice weakening with every word.
Oh my God.
Eventually, she stopped speaking. The other voice was older, heavy with grief. She called desperately for her children, her voice trembling from both fear and the pain of serious injuries. Choi heard her frantic pleas for hours until she too stopped. Outside, through the night of June 29th and into the following day, rescuers began using cranes and heavy machinery with caution, lifting massive slabs of concrete and steel and setting them aside piece by piece.
Dude, being a rescuer too is also so scary because like, imagine the things that they see, especially like using the cranes and like trying to be really careful. That is like super scary.
And even after over a day of nonstop work, the site looked almost unchanged from above. The same mountain of compressed floors, the same rising dust, the same crews moving carefully across surfaces that were still not fully stable. Then, at 8:57 p.m. on July 1st, a full 2 days after the collapse, the first trapped survivors were found. Rescuers reached a basement dressing room that had remained mostly intact. 24 cleaning staff were pulled out alive. That same evening, crews broke through to the section of the basement where Lee Sun-min had been trapped and brought her out alongside another survivor. However, the situation after those 3 days grew darker. 3 days is the maximum that most people can survive without water in hot weather.
Dude, and with the dust, that's gotta be way worse because then you can't even just like wet your mouth with your spit because it's all like clogged up from all the stuff in the air. And I really hope the guy who had this happen and didn't like fix anything or go through any of the warnings, I hope he's in prison forever. Like, that is crazy. There's no way he gets away with this.
Only dead bodies were being recovered now. And so, the mission shifted. The heavy equipment would now be used more aggressively to clear out the remaining debris, since they believed there was no one left alive to be harmed underneath. But they were wrong. On day 4, the sounds of the machinery working above were the first things Yu Ji-hwan could remember hearing after the collapse. For the past 4 days, her mind had been fighting with itself.
Oh my God.
Sometimes she felt like she could survive this, but other days she believed she was going to die.
Yeah.
When it rained, she tried to drink the water, but it tasted like rust. But then, the pressure from the heavy equipment above made the rubble around her legs collapse onto them. Pain coursed through her. As time went, the rubble above her started to sink closer and closer to her. She feared for her life, and she feared that her mother would never know what happened to her. 6 more days passed without a living person found. Officials began
6
shifting the operation
days?
from rescue to recovery. Many on site were sure no one else could possibly still be alive. But in the dark beneath the rubble, Choi found rainwater pooling in the concrete around him.
Dude, if they're like just focused on the rescue effort for 6 days, those guys in the top like board meeting room are definitely gone. Like, they peeled out already. It's over.
He drank it to keep himself alive in hopes that someone would find him before it was too late. Then, 9.5 days after the collapse, at around 9 a.m. on July 9th, a construction crew could not believe it as they pulled Choi alive from the wreckage. 1 day later, Yuji Hwan, still alive, could hear the workers' radios. They called out asking if someone was there. She screamed to them, but they didn't hear her. So
Wow.
she banged on the rubble. The chatter turned to excitement as they confirmed someone was alive. She saw the hole opening and felt the relief that she would be able to tell her mother what had happened to her
What the
son.
hell?
They pulled her out, and she was rushed to the hospital.
Wow.
These rescues were
Holy crap! And she doesn't know too, or she probably does. She gave so much hope to everybody there too. Like everybody was probably only seeing like bodies and not rescuing anybody. But when they saved her, it was probably like a wave of like, oh my God, we saved a life.
miracles in their own right, and they didn't expect to find anyone else after that, especially not 17 days after the building fell. But that's when rescuers found 19-year-old Park Seung-hyun
17
alive.
days?
She thought only 5 days
Oh
had
my
passed and asked for
God!
water. With only a scratch on her leg, the
What?
doctors believe she survived so long because she was semi-conscious and may have drunk rainwater to sustain herself.
Holy
She just didn't
crap!
remember. She was the last survivor found alive in the wreckage. By then, the search had stretched on for more than 2 weeks. After that,
This is also gonna sound really weird, but this is like one of those videos where like, if I'm feeling bad and like I hate stuff that's happening to me, I watch something like this and I'm like, damn, like I'm kind of a big baby for real for like complaining about some shit.
the operation recovered only the dead. When it finally ended, 502 people were dead. 502 lives.
Oh my God.
Workers, shoppers, parents, children crushed beneath a building that never should have been allowed to stand in the first place. It took the government 20 days to officially designate the Sampoong site a special disaster zone, which finally unlocked emergency funding, resources, and legal authority for rescue operations. But by that time, there was
It was
no one
over.
alive to rescue.
Yeah.
9 days after that, the National Assembly formed a special investigation committee to determine what had caused the collapse and who was responsible. Korean lawmakers had already been hearing theories. Earlier that year, 2 gas explosions had struck other parts of Seoul, so some pointed to a similar cause here. Others suggested an act of terrorism, raising the possibility of North Korean involvement. But investigators quickly ruled both theories out.
Yeah, because they have like, I guess, evidence of like permits or like evidence of other people who were like, I tried to help, but he told me to F off.
Fires in the rubble came from the gasoline of crushed cars in the underground garage, and the footage of the collapse showed the building fell straight down, not outwards, proving there was no explosion. The focus soon turned to an investigation into the mall's construction. The evidence was not difficult to find.
Yeah.
Columns were undersized, rebar was insufficient, escalator holes had been cut through the structural slabs.
That's crazy.
The building had been carrying far more weight than it was ever designed to hold, on a structure that had been altered, overloaded, and inadequately inspected from the moment it was built. The day after
I get so scared to go outside sometimes because like these like corpo, I guess, malpractices are insane and they probably happen all the time and you have no idea. Like you basically just put your faith in somebody and hope that they're a good person because it's so easy to just skirt around all this crap.
After the collapse, Chairman Lee Jun and his son Lee Han-sung, who was the store's president, were arrested. Their photographs circulated on every Korean news channel for days. They became, in a very short period, 2 of the most infamous people in the country.
Good.
Yet, even after being
Even then, if they get out, everybody hates you. Like you're done. You're done.
detained, Lee Jun showed almost no remorse.
What?
In interviews, he said almost nothing about the dead. He only expressed concern for how much money he lost.
There's no way. This is like a super villain in a comic book. How does he not care? Every villain is lemons. Oh my God.
Lee Jun was charged with negligent homicide for the consequences of his reckless actions. Prosecutors also traced the disaster back to a wider web of corruption, arguing that bribed officials had helped illegal design changes pass the inspection.
What?
As a result, Lee Jun was also charged with bribery. Prosecutors sought a
Yeah.
20-year sentence. Eventually,
20 years is insane, by the way. He was the fault of 500 lives being lost, and he's just gonna go to timeout for 20 years? That is insane. Yeah, the feet guy got 16 years.
he would be convicted of criminal negligence and sentenced to 10 years and 6 months in
10?
prison. On appeal, that sentence was reduced to 7 years and 6.
7 years for what? Oh my god, that should be 7,000 years. Holy crap.
months. Meanwhile, his son, Han Sang-lee, was jailed for 7 years for corruption and accidental homicide.
Oh
Part
my
of the
god.
Seocho local government approval system was found to be
Accidental? You made those choices that made this happen. There was nothing accidental about that at all. You know what you were doing.
corrupt. City officials were also punished for illegally approving the building's designs. Lee Chung-woo, a district administrator connected to the area, received 3 years in prison for bribery. Former Seocho ward chief Hwang Shul-min was also convicted of taking bribes. And
Dude, their amount in prison basically just saved them from public ridicule, gave them protection from the backlash they were going to get from like everybody in society. They basically won by going to prison for 7 years. That is insane.
received a 10-year sentence. But for most South Koreans, the punishments still felt painfully small compared with the scale of the disaster. A month after the collapse, with bodies still being identified and families still searching for the missing, the Lee family offered their entire wealth as compensation to the victims. For many of the bereaved, even this did not come close to feeling like justice.
To be fair, in America, they would have said, nah, not a boo-boo, too bad.
Lee Han-sang, Lee Jun's son and the president of the Sampoong Mall, left the business world entirely after his release and became a Christian evangelist in Mongolia. Lee Jun did not live long after leaving prison. He died on October 4th, 2003, after suffering from diabetes, high blood pressure, and kidney disease.
He just had every debuff?
He had only served roughly half his already reduced sentence. Most importantly, the collapse forced changes that extended far beyond the Sampoong Group. In the months that followed, South Korea introduced new disaster management laws and began building a more centralized emergency response system.
Okay,
And
that's
when the
good.
investigators looked more broadly at the country's building stock, they found that 14% of high-rise structures were deemed unsafe, 84% required repair work, and
Wow.
only 2% fully met safety standards.
Damn, those were people that actually cared and they kept up with everything and everybody else took advantage of the system.
Sampoong was merely a visible consequence of a rotted system infected with
Yeah.
robbery and negligence. The site itself was eventually cleared and redeveloped. A luxury apartment complex now stands where the department store once did.
Okay, I'm not trying to be a hater, but like no memorial, just like straight up housing? That's crazy. Like that was a huge disaster.
In the end, Sampoong was not a freak accident. It was the final consequence of greed at every stage of the building's life, during its design, its construction, its illegal modifications, and finally, in the decision to not evacuate when the danger was impossible to ignore. 502 people died because one man put profit ahead of human life for years. Another 937 barely made it out alive and were forced to live on with a horrifying trauma. 30 years is a long time. Long enough for a collapsed department store to be replaced by a luxury apartment complex.
Crazy.
But the people of South Korea still haven't moved on from the tragedy that unfolded on June 29, 1995. Choi Myung-suk, Yoo Ji-hwan, and Park Sung-hyun later came to be known as the last survivors. All three carried what happened to them for the rest of their lives. Yoo Ji-hwan spent nearly a decade afraid to use the subway, haunted by the memory of being trapped underground. Choi Myung-suk struggled with nightmares and sleepless nights, replaying screams and falling concrete. Yet over time, he eventually returned to working life and directed his career toward construction safety.
Oh, wait, W! He turned it around and he's making a difference. Dude, W mans.
Along with Park Sung-hyun, these final survivors formed a bond that would last a lifetime.
Aw.
Connected by the
I mean, they need each other. Like, how many people are gonna understand exactly what happened and like they can like talk about it and help each other heal?
memory of what almost ended them and how, by a miracle, they still got out alive. But not everyone found closure. Families like that of Lee Gyun-suk never learned her fate. Her family filed missing person reports in the weeks that followed and contacted every available agency, but no answers ever came. For them and so many other families, June 29, 1995 remains an open wound. Every year, on the anniversary, families gather at a memorial tower and honor the memories of the lost loved ones.
I'm glad they got a
Recently,
memorial.
The dead were remembered on the 30th anniversary in 2025 at the Sampoong Disaster Memorial Tower in Mahon Citizens Forest, where bereaved families gathered and laid out 502 pink pinwheels across the ground, one for each person who did not come home. If you found this video interesting and would like to help get it noticed by the algorithm, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Another way you can help is by checking out another one of
Guy who just says yes all the time. Yes!
our videos, like this one. Speaking of support, thank you to our top-tier members, Nexus and Xander, as well as our other generous members at
Nah, that's breaking news.
stack.com/brew for helping keep this channel going.
Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, please come by the Twitch stream, twitch.tv/BerryCrepe, or use code Berry for 10% off your gamer subs order. It super helps me out. One day I would really, really like to get a booba cup, so I appreciate it. Have a great evening. Goodbye, YouTube! Berry out!